Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already done so, please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can get my latest notifications when I drop my videos. This is your girl Sunshine Love, giving you real stories, real people, real situations. Now, before we get into today's story, I want to take care of a little housekeeping and read my disclaimer. Now, the content delivered through this video may or may not be graphic and detailed, and it could describe criminal conduct, which includes violence, sexual assault, and homicides. If the content discussed becomes troubling and upsetting to you in any way, I ask that you please discontinue watching. If you believe that this content may impact you or your quality of life in a negative way in any manner whatsoever, you are not permitted to access the content, and you can discontinue watching the video at this time, whether it's through our YouTube channel, podcast, or social media site. Also, all suspects described in this content should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. You should not approach or make any contact in any way to any suspect or wanted fugitive named in the content of any videos that we discuss or social media, as they could be dangerous. So let's get into it. Today's story is going to be about Courtney Glenn Lee Palmer. He was a loved individual. One of the fondest memories his parents have of him is the memories of Courtney building cars. He could build cars out of anything, no matter what it was. Courtney could definitely figure out the complexity of cars. It totally intrigued him. Courtney Palmer was born on June 18th. He was 23 years old, born to parents Aaron Palmer and Deborah Wooten. Courtney grew up at St. Andrew's Baptist Church in LA until he was 9 years old. Shortly after, he moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he graduated from high school and then became a proud father. Courtney loved children. He loved his children, and he would call them his daddy's babies. Loving children was a natural instinct for Courtney. It seemed to bring out his loving nature, his humorous side. He was laughable and also funny. His mom always says that his true purpose and calling was to definitely be a comedian, because he could definitely light up a room full of laughter. Unfortunately, Courtney disappeared and was last seen on November the 10th, 2016. Police received a tip of a body badly burned in a shallow grave, which was later identified to be Courtney Palmer. Courtney was a young man who was a victim of a horrible attack. And I ask, at this point, did the police fail Courtney Palmer? As we dive into this case and break down the series of events, I want you to ask just that. Could Courtney's murder have been prevented had the police taken a different approach? Again, Courtney was last seen on November the 18th, 2016. His body was found a month later. This case made headlines in all news circuits due to the inhumane way in which Courtney was killed. His deceased body was burned and then dumped. Courtney's autopsy was completed by the Oklahoma State Medical Examiner's Office, and they revealed that his body was badly burned and it was in an advanced state of decomposition. His facial bones and several ribs were broken during the attack. He was beaten, strangled, and stomped on. Then his body was wrapped and then set on fire. Courtney's story aired, if you haven't remembered, it initially aired on 2 segments on the first 48. First part and second part in season 19. As we discuss this case, majority of the events that we're going to be discussing is going to be information and interviews that was discussed on the first 48 hours. Now let's go into the first part, and this is going to be how everything started off.
In the
Victim
Unspeakable
Carl Harris,
Part
also
1.
known as Duke, was shot multiple times and was rushed to surgery in St. Francis Hospital. Police arrived at the home of Carl Harris, where they found multiple casings throughout the apartment. Carl was shot several times in the torso and laying in a near alley. The shooting occurred on the inside of the apartment. The police was later able to locate Carl's girlfriend at the scene of the crime, and they then brought her to the police station to do an investigation to determine what happened and what led to Carl getting shot. Upon interviewing her, she states that Courtney initially came to borrow the car from Carl, and he left and went to a nearby apartment complex. Now, the vehicle in question is a gold Monte Carlo. The girlfriend states that when Courtney came back, he stated that someone took the keys from him. He didn't have the keys, he didn't have the car. He said some guy across the street at the apartments took it from him. Courtney seemed very anxious, which she said he always was. She said he also seemed very upset and hyped up. But at that time, Carl was actually curious as to who and why they would even take the keys. And she says that Carl then asked for her to take him to the apartments so he can go get his keys and his car. They all left and got to the apartments. And she says that Carl went into the apartments, and when he walked up to the door and he knocked, she walked off figuring everything is fine. Immediately when she heard shots, her and Courtney and they ran off. But then as she turned around, she noticed Carl coming out of the apartments, and she asked him, was he shot? He said yes and fell down to the ground. Police then went on a search for Courtney after they completed the interview with the girlfriend. The police actually knew of Courtney in prior cases, so they were familiar with him. The investigator also stated pretty much that Courtney was a good person. It was just who he associated with. He associated with the wrong crowd of people that he typically hung out with. Later, they get a call that a man shows up at the hospital and states that he saw the entire shooting, which was identified as Courtney Palmer. Courtney Palmer then arrives to the police station, and upon speaking to him, they learned that it was actually a woman in the apartment complex that took his keys and not a man. Courtney stated that when he arrived to the apartment, he went there to get his keys with Carl. Carl knocked on the door. The guy answered, and Carl said, "Hey, are my keys here to my car?" Courtney said immediately everyone rushed to the back of the apartment, and then shots started to fire. Courtney said he also had information on other cases and then requested a GPS and protection so that because he felt like people were after him. He also asked to be sent to California to his sister's house. Courtney's demeanor was very nervous.
I gotta walk back and forth because I'm ADHD bipolar. Carl was just trying to help me. He went in the house for me.
I know.
And I wanted to prove to that I did not set him up.
And protection so that because he felt like people were after him. He also asked to be sent to California to his sister's house. Courtney's demeanor was very nervous. He moved around a lot. He did state initially that, hey, I have ADHD and bipolar. I need my medication. He also said that he was hungry and scared. Courtney said that he was trying to do the right thing, and he ultimately felt like he was going to die.
Can you give me a GPS?
Why do you need a GPS?
So these motherfuckers won't come down there, kid.
I am willing to give out any information needed, as well as shooters and other information on other cases. Courtney then went on to say that he wanted his daughter, and again, he wanted a GPS. He wanted to be sent to California to where his sister lived, and he also asked for his medication. And again, he stated that he had ADHD, bipolar, and schizophrenia. And he also asked for his mom. At this point, I asked, did the police make a mistake by releasing Courtney? Because the investigator at that point left and brought Courtney something to eat, brought him a cigarette, thinking that would get him to calm down. The investigator said he felt uncomfortable with the statement that Courtney provided, and he was going to send him home with his mom to reconvene at a later date to hope that he can get a better statement. But I asked again, Was that a mistake? And here's my concern and my feedback. At that time of Courtney's interview, the police had already confirmed that Courtney was at the scene of the crime. And initially, the motive of the shooting involved a borrowed car, basically. They had already verified that. By the police already knowing Courtney from other cases, I felt like a different approach could have been taken. Courtney could have been treated as a person of interest, possibly held for 72 hours while they did their investigation to confirm if the allegations of which Courtney made, if they were true or not. At what point do we offer the needed help and resources for individuals when they come into the police, custody? Why wasn't a mental professional brought in for Courtney? If he kept stating that he felt like he was going to die, why was that statement not taken seriously? So let's kind of go further into the case, because I feel at that moment that was a very critical point. Because if someone tells you that I feel like I'm going to die, no matter what condition you think that they're in, I think that you should investigate that and take that seriously. So whether or not the police felt comfortable at that time with the information on the statement provided, none of Courtney's requests were even considered or honored. And again, once he stated, I have ADHD, I have bipolar, schizophrenia, why wasn't a mental professional brought in at that time, since police officers do not have those credentials or that training? After releasing Courtney, police then locate the woman that actually took the keys. The police were able to locate her and bring her in to do an investigation. She states that she's known Courtney since he was younger. She stated that she took the keys from him because he was driving erratic. He seemed to be on something. And then she actually left the apartment and then later started receiving phone calls about the shooting. Police then asked, did she know the name of Teddy as being the shooter? And she said she never heard of Teddy. And the reason why the police asked that, because that's also one of the names that Courtney dropped during his interview. He stated that the shooter's name was Teddy. Now, police then go on to try to go to the hospital to see if they can get a statement from Carl. However, he was heavily sedated and couldn't speak. Now, this is 4 days later. Police then tried to go look for Courtney at his mom's house to see if they could obtain a better statement from him and see if he had taken his medication, but they weren't able to locate him. At this time, police receive a call from someone who says that they were there the time that Carl shot. The caller arrived to the police station, and it turns out this was actually the man that was living in the apartment that Carl and Courtney went to get their keys. Carl stated that I shot Carl. He didn't know him, didn't know of Carl. He stated that he was in the apartment with his girlfriend, a female friend, and their kids. And actually, Carl and Courtney approached the door, and Carl started kicking the door. He became alarmed when they then kicked in the window. And he says when he opened up the door, the guy tells Carl, hey, I have kids in here. And allegedly, Carl says, F those kids. He immediately goes to the back, gets his gun that he has up on the mattress, and he starts shooting. And he said that he felt threatened and that he would do it again. Now, shortly after that, the DA looked into that case and no charges were filed on him. It was ruled, the case with Carl Harris, a.k.a. Duke, was ruled in self-defense.
I knew that I didn't do nothing wrong. If I could press for one, I would shoot, but I would have stayed. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now, at this time, the police still haven't located Courtney. But the reason why they're getting alarmed, because word on the street is that individuals felt like Courtney set Carl up. So now this is turned into part 2. Now, tips starting to come out. Everybody is saying that he got killed due to retaliation of Carl Harris, a.k.a. Duke's shooting. And it actually happened in a bathroom of a house. A female friend call the tip line, because at this point the police are getting tips that are being called in, and the woman agreed to come into the police department. Now she states that she heard that not only was he beaten and tortured, but Courtney's body was sent to a pig farm, which is where they have hogs in Summit, in an area in Oklahoma. Now, regarding that is actually a rumor regarding the body being the remains being put where hogs were. So police then call Courtney's mom, which at this time is 8 days missing. His mom is very worried. She states that Courtney calls her every day, no matter what the situation is, no matter what his condition is. He calls daily to not only tell her that he loves her, but that he's sorry for the life that he has lived. He's also always maintained contact with his sister in California. At this time, it's now day 15, and they're still looking for Courtney. They go to where the witness state that Courtney was last seen in the house where they say that he was tortured, which is a home owned by an individual named Charlotta. Police get to the home. They find Charlotta, her son's girlfriend. So they bring all of those individuals into the police station. They start investigating them. The first person they talk to is the son's girlfriend, which is Janetta. So Janetta immediately says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know Courtney. I didn't see anything. So they now go to the son. The son starts the interview and says, I don't know anything. I know of Courtney. I've seen some things on Facebook. The last time I seen Courtney was during Halloween. So the police then advise him that if he is lying and not cooperative in any way, charges could be faced. He then says, I'm not going to jail for anybody. And he starts just telling the whole story.
Until I heard her scream. The girl, and she started shooting him. And after that, it just got worse. And they made
He stated that Courtney was tortured from 11 p.m. to about 6 or 7 p.m. This is horrible, a horrible act. And Courtney did not deserve this. No one deserves this type of manner in any way. He states that Courtney was cut, choked, kicked, stomped on. He just said it just got worse and worse. Courtney initially arrived to the house, and soon after, 2 individuals came from the back and started beating him. One of the individuals was a female, and she allegedly also dated Courtney prior to. And the 2 individuals that came from the back, they were also in a relationship at that point. They immediately started hitting and beating Courtney. And again, the son said it just got worse and worse. At this time, they go and they start to speak with Charlotta, the person who is owning or renting the house. She then first starts off, hey, I don't know anything. And they say, hey, your son has already given us the story. You might as well tell us the truth. So she then goes into the story, and she pretty much confirms what the son said, that they beat him, they tortured him. They then went and got bags of ice and made him sit in it for hours. He begged for them to let him go, and they would not. She then says that she went into her room and she closed the door.
Courtney was with cowboy boots on. She's just stomping them.
Individuals in that house were aware of what was going on, and they let it happen. So Charlotta lets them know that, hey, the guy that was part of the torturing, his name is actually Gerald Lowe. I don't know the young lady. I hadn't seen her before. Come to find out, from the vehicle, there was a white truck that was driven at the house. They went and got surveillance from a nearby corner store, Quick Trip. That's when they see the female and also the son's girlfriend at the corner store getting ice. So the same individual, the young lady who said that she didn't know anything that was going on, she's now confirmed to be involved in this case. Police learned that Gerald Lowe, and now the female's name of interest is Michelle Riddle, were the individuals that crudely assaulted and murdered Courtney. And as the police searched for Michelle, they learned that, again, through the video footage from the store, that she is actually the one who did majority of the torturing to Courtney. Allegedly, the ice was used as another torture attempt. Again, they threw the ice in the bathtub and made Courtney sit in it for long periods of time, where he literally begged for his life and begged for them to let him go. Now, on December of 2016, the police found the remains of Courtney Palmer. Now, Charlotta Mack is now being accused of allowing the murder to happen in her home without calling the police. Her son, the son's girlfriend, she was also charged. Gerald Lowe was charged, and Michelle Riddle was charged. All these individuals in this house that were aware of this murder and this heinous crime that took place. When the police go through the home of Charlotta Mack, there they find blood splotches in the bathroom. They use the infrared light and they see it, and they asked her during her interview what happened to the bathroom. She is the one that actually cleaned it up, which is just sad that no one did anything. Now, also during Charlotta's interview, it was also said allegedly that she was the one that actually lured Courtney to the home. She said, "No, I didn't lure him. Courtney just basically showed up to the apartment," which that hasn't been confirmed or denied. Now, police also find out that Gerald Lowe lived in an outside county where they said that Courtney's remains were taken, and sadly, they were able to locate and identify the remains. Our hearts go out to the family members of Courtney Palmer. This was a horrible, horrible act. No one deserves this at all. Now, as we dive into the charges for the defendants who were, again, dating at the time, Gerald Lowe and Riddle, were accused of beating Palmer inside of the home at the 4600 block of North Boston Place during a dispute that they're also tying in a gang-related activity into this event as well. Again, they put his body and set it on fire in a shallow grave out there where Lowe is stated to have lived at some point in time. Janetta Thomas, which is the son's girlfriend, she testified in October that Palmer was attacked because of Lowe's and Riddle's belief that Palmer set up Carl Thomas. So this was hugely based on retaliation. Janetta Thomas also told Assistant District Attorney that she saw Lowe Palmer choke Palmer and then put his body in a blue dry cleaner's bag and also put that bag over his head. And they also put a pot of boiling water on his face. According to a Washington Law article written by Rick Herperlin, the lead homicide investigator, Jason White, which is the investigator, he testified that Lowe and Riddle were linked to Palmer's burial site and how they found that is that they linked DNA collected from a sock and a vacuum cleaner device covered from the home. And this is where they tried to do a series of cleanup. Gerald Lowe and Riddle reportedly also had sex in the house before they removed the mattress from the bedroom. And this was the mattress that they actually wrapped Courtney Palmer's body in and tried to set on fire. A probable cause affidavit states that Courtney Palmer's girlfriend told Detective White in an interview that Riddle said, "This is about to be some first 48 stuff," after the girlfriend began crying and seeing the news report of Courtney's disappearance. And that is one of the statements that Riddle actually said during her torture to Courtney, that since my cousin can't talk, you won't either. So the DA states that due to the nature of this crime, it does merit the death penalty, and lethal injection should be considered. And actually, Oklahoma actually executed a total of 200 men and 3 women between 1915 and 2022. Oklahoma has carried out at least 11 executions scheduled for 2023, administering lethal injection to death row prisoner as of January the 12th. So they are a state that does believe in the death penalty. However, a judge later sentenced Gerald Lowe to 20 years for kidnapping, 7 years for desecration of a human corpse, 5 years for a gang-related offense. Lowe and Riddle are accused of beating and battering Courtney Palmer for hours before he died. And on February the 24th, 2020, Riddle was actually charged with the beating to death, post-mortem burning, and later received 49 years in prison sentence. And after a week after that, a jury convicted her of also second-degree murder, kidnapping, and desecration of human remains. Lowe also had a felony conviction for an offense that involved the use of a threat or violence on another, which was listed as a third-degree aggravator on himself. Now, he pled guilty to the crime. Riddle actually tried to appeal her decision, but the court kept her sentence the way that it is, and no changes were made in that. Now, Charlotta Mack, she was charged to accessory of Palmer's death, but was ineligible for the death penalty. Mack testified against Lowe and Riddle during a preliminary hearing in October of 2020, describing that she observed them repeatedly beating Palmer in her home until he couldn't breathe no more, and explaining her reasons for not immediately notifying the police, that she was basically scared. Janetta Thomas, that was 19, was a co-defendant with Lowe and Riddle on the murder. She was a witness, intimidation, and kidnapping counts, but all charges against her were eventually dropped. Again, this was a heinous crime. I definitely felt like the police could have went a different direction. I understand that there's so many factors that go into place with Courtney's drug history, and his history with previous crimes. But I think when we're talking to people, we have to understand what they're saying and whether it's true or not, and kind of go from there. And his life could have been saved had they detained him, had they kept him, had they taken a different approach. I felt like they gave up too quickly by releasing him, only for them to murder and kill him in a horrible way. As I conclude my video, it is always my intention to bring awareness. I do understand that the details described in these videos can be hurtful and painful, but ultimately I ask that everyone please keep these family members and friends, especially their children, in prayer, especially because these are victims. No matter what life they led, no matter what the situation is, no one deserves to be murdered in this magnitude. Losing a loved one is never easy, but we hope by telling the story and spreading light on the situation that it helps in some shape, form, or fashion. Now, again, this is your girl, Sunshine Love. Thank you so much for tuning into my video. Again, please make sure you subscribe. I love the dialogue that goes on in my comments. I love to get people talking. I love to hear your feedback because it's always my intent to share the victim's story, tell about the victim, because these are still human beings and they don't deserve to die and get murdered in this sense. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. You have a blessed one. This is your girl, Sunshine Love. Also, I wanted to share this earlier, and I wanted to add this to the conclusion that the narrative and the story that was pushed out there that Courtney Palmer set up Carl Harris was actually alleged and to be said to be not true. So I do want to make sure that I add that into this story so my viewers can know that. Please make sure you subscribe, and thank you so much again for tuning in. This is your girl, Sunshine Love. Be blessed.